This is the Authority Company podcast, conversations with leaders that are designing our future. Hola, I'm Joe Pardavila, and over the past year, I've been writing a lot about this caring deficit we're living in today, where we just don't care about one another, and there's this lack of kindness, and there's this promotion of casual cruelty that's seen as cool and funny. Well, unfortunately, all of that can lead to some really, really negative effects. And my guest today knows full well about that. Her name is Sandy Lundy. She's the author of the new book, Earth Angels: How Ordinary Actions Can Leave an Extraordinary Impact. Sandy was inspired to write this book after her son Shane died by suicide in 2018 after being bullied in school. So this conversation is going to be just like the book. It's going to be raw, it's going to be real, but we're going to learn about what it's like to go through something like this, what we can do in everyday life to stop this from happening in the future. And we'll talk about Sandy's hope that we can all become Earth Angels. Sandy, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you so much for having me.
You're very welcome. And so I want to start our conversation talking about a little personal because, reading your book and seeing what you've been through over the last few years, I get flashbacks to my childhood because I was severely bullied as a kid. And my bullying was, I'm a Generation Xer, so it was more old school bullying, like making fun of the fat kid, pushing me into lockers, that kind of thing. So reading about what your child went through and what children are going through today with on top of the personal bullying, there's now the internet, which can be a glorious place, but it also could be a hellhole. So tell me about, in terms of bullying, because I know the word, I think something we were all guilty of, Sandy, is like, if we use the word enough, it like loses its meaning. Like, there's certain words, like when people say, I have anxiety, I'm having, and I'm like, well, were you diagnosed with anxiety, or are you feeling anxiety? So all of a sudden words like anxiety lose its meaning. And then bullying the same way. Like someone didn't like the shirt I was wearing, I was bullied. And so all of a sudden bullying gets watered down. But tell me about your case in terms of bullying and what your son experienced that was, I guess, the impetus for our conversation and the book today.
Yeah, sure. Well, a lot of times it's so easy for people to say, "Oh, there's signs of bullying." I had no idea, and I've learned through the process that more often than not, the person that's suffering the most looks the happiest. So you never know what somebody is going through. Had I known what was happening, I'd have never let him go, ever. The whole thing started, actually, this is how I start the book, actually. Not long after it happened, one of my neighbors stopped by my house. She asked if she could drop something off in my mailbox. I said, sure. The day that she came, she had her son with her. His name is Luke, and he was in elementary school at the time. And when they came to the house, apparently Luke was being really badly bullied at school, in elementary school, really on the bus, at school, but thankfully he reported what was happening, so his parents were able to do something about it. But when he came to my house, he shot up in the back seat. He said, "Mom, a really nice boy lives here. He's the only one who's nice to me, and every day he gives me a high five on the bus." And he was talking about my son Shane. But what he didn't know was that a couple of days prior, Shane died by suicide because Shane was being bullied. I had no idea. So in giving those high fives, Shane was making a kid who he kind of felt his pain feel special, feel seen. And that was like a light bulb moment for me because, after the tsunami, kind of settled a little bit, I just realized I had no idea if this could happen to me, this can happen to literally anybody. So I just said, and I recognized that the people that are suffering the most, you often, you don't know it. And the book kind of delves into the fact that bullying doesn't end on the playground. It doesn't. But a lot of people assume that it does. And the problem is a lot of adults are carrying around really antiquated mindsets about what bullying is. No, it's not like what you said, to your point, pushing and shoving somebody into the locker. But as we get older, it kind of morphs into something different. And we just say, oh, that person's a jerk or whatever. And, it's happening everywhere. We see it on TV every day. I mean, adults behaving poorly. And they're more likely than not, the same people that tell their kids, be kind to others, don't bully. But then, you go to any youth sporting event, forget it. It's like it's rampant. It's everywhere. You watch TV, it's on the news, like the fight at Disneyland or World or whatever. It's like, what are those adults showing not only their kids, but every other kid who is watching? And I say this in the book. It's our inherent responsibility as an adult to lead by example all the time, because kids are watching and they're learning from us. And maybe they don't follow their parents for whatever reason if they have a horrible home life. So they're going to look to other people for role models. And I also get into the whole online thing and the cultivated perfection that we see all the time. I want kids to know that your value, your worth is not a picture of how you look with your lips pursed. It's how you treat other people. That's really your value. And in fact, last week, I always tell people, ignore the trolls, ignore the trolls. I had a troll that just said the most horrible thing to me, and I let it get to me. I'm a hypocrite. I mean, but I wrote a blog post about it because I said to everybody, I'll do better. But I felt guilty to the very thing that I try to tell people not to. And the person says something very, very horrible, and he was adamant about it too. And I just got physically sick over it and let it get to me. And then I realized I was focusing on that one negative, that one person, but I not at the time recognizing and appreciating the hundreds, maybe more, thousands of people that supported me and said, just ignore, So you got to kind of put things in perspective.
Yeah. There's a lot to unpack there, Sandy. So first I want to start with the adult piece, because you're right. There's something about, and it actually connects to the internet piece that you were talking about too, is the fact that bullying and being cruel feeds into the algorithm. So all of a sudden you see the bullying and the cruelty boosted up and in our face all the time. And in my lifetime, I've never seen quote unquote leaders be cruel on purpose. Like and I know people always like to shit on the previous generation, stuff like that, but I feel like whether it's Gen Xers, boomers, even greatest generation folks that are still around with us, is like the leaders that we were looked up to and grown up with. If they were cruel, it was usually an accident. Like it was probably like they misspoke or something like that. But now we're in this world where cruelty is sort of like put on a pedestal, like, oh, look how cruel this person is. So this is what kind of worries me about future generations, looking at, Gen Alpha, Gen Y, is the fact that in a way, Sandy, and obviously you know this firsthand now, especially, with what you went through and now what you're going through as an author and thought leader, is that it's okay to be cruel. And I don't like that. I don't like the way this is where we're heading here, where as a society that we don't like tell people, hey, cut the crap, and these are adults we're talking to. So I worry about what the ripple effect of the fact that I call it casual cruelty. Like people can just be cruel so easily, yet I just worry about what kind of like fingerprints it's going to put on future generations.
Yeah, I agree 1,000%. Like what I said, that person would never have said that to my face. It's just because if you're behind a screen, it makes it you're anonymous and you feel free to say whatever you want to say. So I do touch upon this in the book. It's time for people to stand up to these things. And you know what? My friends and followers did stand up to this particular time. It's time for more people to do that. And, like I said, you go to any youth sporting event and you watch these parents cheering on their kid, but they're cursing out this referee who's in high school, calling him an idiot or are you blind or whatever, and their kids are the ones that are playing on the field and their teammates. And it's like, we've got to start taking a step back and understanding that this is something that we have to actually practice every single day. So I always tell kids, kindness and integrity they're not just character traits. They're action words. These are things that we need to practice every single day of our lives. And sometimes we have a slip, like me with the troll. I fell into that darkness, but I got out of it because I recognized the goodness of the people that came around and embraced me and supported me over that. And I always, like with my kids' programs, I always, and my own boys, raising them, hurt people. I say, think about it. If you're really happy and you're in a fantastic mood, something really great happened, the last thing you're going to want to do is hurt someone's feelings or do something bad. You're going to want to lift somebody up. But if something really bad happened to you or you feel crappy about yourself, you're going to take it out on other people because you just got to kind of, like you said, to your point, a ripple effect. It can go either way. A ripple effect of kindness being kindness and integrity, or toxic environments spreads like a ripple too. So
Yeah.
every day you have that choice.
Yeah, and you mentioned earlier about the fact that you didn't know what Shane was going through, and in my case, I never told my parents that I was bullied, and the only time I had to tell my dad was because I'd come home, one of the bullies had kicked my ass, and I was like all like scratched up and everything like that. So I told him, it was like, this guy, kicked my ass. So we went in, and then of course, as you probably know, my dad embarrassingly takes me to school and asks, what's going on, what's being done, and then they'll make the kid apologize,
Yeah.
which does
Makes
absolutely
it
nothing.
worse.
It makes it worse, and then the cycle just keeps repeating itself. So, the fact that Shane didn't share that with you, I think, is a common thing for a lot of kids that are going through this, and I think it's one of those things where I don't know where it stems from. I guess embarrassment. In my case, was I just did, and like you mentioned, I didn't want to make it worse by saying something. It's the old which is there, the stitches get stitches kind of thing.
Yeah.
Uh, what can we do to help kids? I mean, the bully side is complicated, but for the victims of bullying, what can we tell them to be like, hey, it's okay to talk about this, to tell either friends, family, teachers, what have you? Where can we start there?
Well, I think it starts at the top because from my experience and what I've learned through this process is that more often than not, bullying, even though kids report it, people don't do anything about it. They'll just say, oh, it was a one-time fight or whatever. Schools are mandated to report. Oh, by the way, bullying is not isolated to happening at school, right? Kids are bullied at
Right.
home. Kids are bullied everywhere. So it's certainly not isolated to happening at school. But I'll just use the schools as an example of something that I've learned through this process is if a child reports an instance of bullying, the school is mandated to report it. They don't do that. Why? I learned because if the school has instances of bullying, people aren't going to want to move to that school district. They're not going to, it's going to affect the entire economy of that particular area because if people don't move to, the real estate's going to be affected, the whole economy is going to be impacted. So my thing is, we have to do something from the top, down. And it maybe starts with, I don't have the answer to be honest with you, but it's why would kids report something if they know that nothing's going to happen, right? And to your point, like what you said about your dad, that the wrong thing to do is humiliate your kid and say, all right, make you apologize to my child for bullying. That's makes the child that was bullied feel even worse. It just completely. So I don't have the solution for that. All I know is, excuse me, is we've got to just start leading by example, and we have to practice what we preach. We can't tell kids to be kind and be nice to other people if they see us having road rage or getting pissy with the barista who's taking our time or whatever. We really have to make an active daily conscious effort to make those choices because like I said before, all kids are watching, not just my kids or your kids.
And that leads us to the book and Earth Angels, the idea of following people's actions. Just for the uninitiated, how would you define what an Earth Angel is?
An earth angel, and everybody has one, and it's great when I talk to adults especially because they're like, I don't know. An earth angel is somebody who does something or says something kind to someone without looking for reward or recognition. And I'll give you the story about one of my earth angels, which is part of my book too. I was bullied as a kid, bad, because one of my eyes was up inside my head when I was born. Long story short, I went through so many different surgeries my whole life since I was born. And when I was in elementary school, I never felt different before that. But all of a sudden, I was in this new school and I was like this weird new kid. And when I say bullied, I mean, I hated lunch. I hated recess. It was horrible. And I never told anybody, never told my parents. I didn't want anybody to worry, And maybe that's why Shane didn't tell me. I don't know, but that's not how I raised him either. But I just shut down. I literally stopped trying. I got F's. So the school called my parents in, and they gave me these tests. I didn't even care. I was just pushing the button, I didn't care. And they labeled me as being learning disabled because I was failing and I was struggling very bad. So they put me in a special class, literally on a short bus, which of course made it worse. And I was just totally gave up. Like, if that's what they think if you start believing what people, like, if they say that you're dumb or you're ugly, you start to believe that, right? You do, whether or not anybody chooses to admit it. I know I did. So thankfully, there was a teacher in this special class who connected with me. And I wanted to someday be a teacher. And she one day brought in like a pen and her attendance, but an attendance pad. She believed in me. And it was everything that I needed. Not that my parents wouldn't have believed in me. They had no idea what was going on, right? And all of a sudden I started trying again. And because I wanted to make her proud, because if she believed in me, that's something, right? And so ultimately another meeting was held, and she said, I'm not learning disabled. I was broken. And they put me back into the mainstream class again, which of course was even more horrible, because then they had something else to pin on me. But that was my last year at that school. And since that time, I was never bullied again for that. And that teacher was an example of an earth angel for me, because I went on, and this is not to brag, but I had 2 master's degrees. I've done so many things with my life. And again, I'm not saying that to brag, but I'm saying I always think, what would have happened to my life had that teacher not believed in me and recognized the fact that I was not learning disabled? I was broken. That's an earth angel.
Wow. All right. So that's an earth angel in IRL. We talked about technology and social media earlier. And you write about this in chapter 6 of the book, about sort of like the digital kindness. How can we be earth angels online in this world? Like I mentioned earlier, the algorithm pushes hate and garbage all in our faces all day long. But how can we be earth angels online?
Just be honest. Everybody's looking at other people's highlight reels, and they're just afraid to show their vulnerability. And kids just see that. They think that everybody's perfect, and adults, especially, I don't want to make people mad, but women are horrible at this. And just be real, because once we start being authentic, that's when people can start to understand, like, that rawness, because we do appreciate that. If you look online, if someone is authentic and real, we appreciate that so much more than somebody's like, oh, I just got back from Hawaii. It's just, you start being real, and then stand up for that toxic stuff. You have to say something, otherwise it's going to continue to spread.
Wow. And in terms of your own personal journey, you talk about and write about this kind of lifelong guilt you have for missing, Shane's pain. And for folks who are, living with guilt every day for whatever reason, how were you able to cope through it? I know self-forgiveness is very important, but like what did you use to be able to get through that? Because I can only imagine, I think most people can only imagine what you went through. It's just like, it's almost so hard to fathom for a lot of people. So it's the worst of the worst, but we all struggle with some sort of form of guilt. How did you work through that?
I don't want anybody to kid anybody. I mean, there are times when I'm in fetal position, not even wanting to get out of bed. So it's like, I don't know if healing is even ever going to be possible, but it's just trying to, like this book, to make sure that what happened to Shane never happens to another kid, because anybody that does know me knows that if this can happen to me, it can happen to anybody. And Shane and I were so close, as with his other brothers, by the way. His other brothers, I'm so proud to say that I've raised 3 amazing men. But, that it just never kind of goes away. And anybody that's lost a child, I think one of the worst things that I hate is when I meet somebody and the most common question is, so you have kids? How many kids do you have? How do I answer that question? I never know how to, because on the one hand, I don't want to say 2 because that's dishonoring Shane. But I never know what to say. So it's always something. There's always a trigger. So I'm not sure that anybody ever really does get over it. But what gets me through is like this conversation right now, just just one, if one person could just take a step back and recognize that the words and actions, the impact that they could have on other people, good or bad, make that choice. Every day we're faced with choices. You could choose good choices or bad choices. And that's your choice to make, ultimately.
Hmm. And so, finding that joy amid grief. I mean, I guess it's such a delicate balance, and I'm sure it's something you've had to deal with because, like you mentioned, you have your two other boys, and you can't always be, sitting in your grief because there are joyful moments in your life. How do you thread that needle of joy through grief? Because again, it's one of those things where it's like, if Shane was your only son, then you could see yourself, kind of just living in this world of grief, but you have to bring joy and you're always surrounded by joy with your two other sons. How do you balance that?
It's, I don't, I wish I had the answer. I don't, I just kind of wing it, but I just have to be strong for my boys and I have to survive for them because they need to know how much they're loved. But I also have to let them, it's the hardest things to let them spread their wings. One of mine just graduated from college and the other one is in college. And I have to let them, I can't be that helicopter mom, but forever. I'm always, if I see an accident on the news or a shooting on the news, it's like the first thing that comes to my head. And my boys, they roll their eyes. I'm like, we're okay, mom. It's always going to be like that. And I will never know when something will trigger. And that's also one of the reasons why I had to get out of where I was living. Is everything reminded me of everything. The school bus trigger, the grocery store, or if I see a kid and I wonder if that's because I don't know. I don't want to know any of the kids that bullied Shane. I don't, because I want to help kids. I don't want to hate them. But it was just so hard for me to see all these kids that were his peers making these great, happy for them milestones, graduating, like the senior prom, learning how to drive, graduation, which is coming up next week, all these milestones that he was robbed of. But I have to celebrate my other two for going through these milestones. So, I have to chin up and make them know how much I love them and how much I'm proud of them.
Hmm. You mentioned the fact that you didn't want to know Shane's bullies. Going through the process of, first of all, finding out that he was bullied, and then I'm sure other stuff started to pop up. How did you look? Were you able to find out like what was happening? Like, did you ever investigate, or did you not even want to go there?
I did not want to go there because I didn't want to know the pain that they put him through. That would just break me. It would, and a lot of parents ask me, like, how could you not want to know? I can't know because what is that going to do? It's not going to bring him back. I don't want to know what they put him through. But in the book, I did write a letter to them, hypothetical. I knew I would never send it. And it's from my heart, a letter to them. Like if they really knew him, they'd have never done what they did to him. And he was, by the way, bullied because he loved Broadway theater. And that was something that I introduced him to and that we did all the time. In fact, he was so passionate about it. The Phantom of the Opera cast came to sing at his funeral. It was just beautiful. I mean, he's impacted so many people. And I get notes from people all the time. As late as a few days ago, I got a note from somebody, a kid that I don't even know that went to school with him and long graduated, but he said, I just want to let you know the impact that Shane had on me. And he was telling me these stories and I had no idea. And those are what better gift can a parent ever get than that, right?
Yeah. You talk about the letter you wrote to the bullies, but there's also, and this is really hard for me to bring up, but you write about the fact that you wrote a letter to the organ donors,
Uh-huh.
the recipients who would receive. Tell us a little bit about that without going too into it, because it's really, like I said, really hard for me to even bring it up. But like the idea that Shane would help give people life, like you mentioned the ripples of like his actual effect, when it was alive, but after his passing, like people are alive because of Shane. Tell me about that and why you decided to write that letter.
Well, because I just knew that this is right after it happened. At that moment, there were people alive because he lived. There's a YouTube video and I recorded it, but I showed pictures of him. And, it's about the people who received his heart, so the person who received his heart, the person who received his lungs, the person who saw his eye, who received his eyes, that could see the beauty and everything like Shane did. It essentially just said, please don't ever take one of those moments for granted because you live because of him. And as you're alive, he's alive.
Hmm.
Mm.
I mean, one of the things I'm sure you probably get when people even try to broach the subject is how you're able to stay this strong. Like, I mean, I just it's inspiring, but also like I'm sure people you probably have people in your life like saying, how are you? How you seem like? And again, this is all on the surface. So you know, people like Sandy, you seem like you have it all together. You have a couple kids graduate college, everything's good. I mean, you know, how do you do it? And you mentioned earlier the fact that there's some days you're curled up in the fetal position, but like, how do you respond when people say stuff like that? When, like, you know, deep down inside, like, there's a hellhole like stewing inside of you, but like, what's your response to people who like when they come up to you and say like, "Sandy, man, look, you look great. You know, how do you do it?"
I simply say, I'm not strong. I'm surviving. Well, I have to. And I have to, for my boys, number one priority. And for the kids that are out there or the people that are out there suffering right now in silence and not telling anybody, they have to understand that they're not alone, number one, and that we're all perfectly imperfect. No one's perfect. Nothing's perfect. We all have flaws. And that's why I stress to kids, find out what your superpower is and use it for good. Yeah, everybody has one, whatever that is. And you could have the same superpower as somebody else, but it's like a fingerprint. Your superpower is never going to be the same as somebody else's. So how can you do that and do good? And I do believe, though, by the way, that this generation of kids, that their footprint is for that generation is going to be kindness and integrity. Because I really believe that these kids are good. They just have had horrible role models.
And for folks who get the book and read up, is there one action that you'd like them to take is, like something's either maybe super simple, something that you hope that will inspire them to do after they've read the book and heard Shane's story?
Yeah. Look in the mirror, take a step back, and recognize the impact that your words and actions have on other people, because we are all of us, I don't care who you are, we are all guilty of do as I say, not as I do mentality. And we've really got to just action, physically think about that every single day. Everything that pops up, you can make a good choice or a poor choice. But, just if this book helps one person realize that they've been a jerk or something, like one person recognize that the importance of who they are and what they do and how that impacts other people and to be an earth angel, then sharing Shane's story is worth it to me.
Awesome. And Sandy, I always wrap up these conversations taking folks behind the dedication of the book. And I think we sort of alluded to who you had to dedicate to, but it's to my three little birds. Can you tell me more about the idea of the three little birds?
Ah, it's not gonna make me cry. So when the kids were growing up, we would play that Bob Marley song, "Everything's Gonna Be All Right," and sing it at the top of our lungs, or mostly I sing it at the top of my lungs. And I always sang it to them, and I always called them my three little birds, or my three little birds, and getting them ready for bed and making them dinner. And, they were my three little baby birds. So that's the whole thing behind that.
Awesome. Her name is Sandy Lundy. The book, Earth Angels, How Ordinary Actions Can Leave an Extraordinary Impact. It's available now. Sandy, thanks so much for your openness, your just being able to talk about something that's so difficult for most people. But we really appreciate your time, and I wish you the best of luck with the book.
Thank you so much. It's really been a pleasure talking to you.
That's going to do it for this episode. If you want to find out more information about Sandy and other amazing authors, go to theauthoritycompany.com.